Grace, mercy, and peace be unto you from God our Father, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. In the beginning was God. In the beginning was the Word of God. In the beginning there were shepherds in the fields watching over their flocks. In the beginning Mary and Joseph fled to seek refuge. We all have our own beginnings. We all tell our own stories. This morning I want to focus on the reading from the Gospel of John. Because in the Gospel of John there is no birth narrative. Instead, John is writing like he is starting to write the Bible. He writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Instead of writing about Adam and Eve, he writes about light. In verse 5, he writes, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it." And I absolutely love that because I love the confidence and the hope and the promise and the joy that one verse brings to us. Our light comes from God, and there is nothing that can overcome that. At the same time, it's also a promise. Even when it seems otherwise, and when we think we can no longer stand the thought of another negative headline in our world, the light continues to shine in the darkness. And the darkness cannot outshine the light. We live in the promise of light. We live in a world where light is stronger than darkness, love is stronger than hate, life is stronger than death. The other verse that stood out to me in the Gospel of John, and we did read it this morning, but it's in verse 18. "No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has been made known to him." Throughout the Bible, we read that nobody has seen the face of God, but then God changes them. It reminds me of a show that I recently watched. I love watching on Netflix the reruns of certain series of shows that I really enjoy, and I mainly go to Friends or The Office. Those are my two go-tos. But recently I started watching this show, House. And I've seen it before. Is anybody familiar with that show? It's a show about these patients who have these complex illnesses that they go to one specialist after another and they can't find the answers of what's wrong with them, and their lives are at stake. But then they go and see Dr. Gregory House. He is an unconventional doctor. He's a medical genius who's at the top of all other doctors. But he has his issues. He's very abrupt with patients. He doesn't really like seeing patients. He's dependent on pain medicine from a past injury. And he's rude to almost everyone he meets. But he likes to figure out the puzzles of what's wrong with a person. And typically in most every episode, he figures out what's wrong and he saves them. And I recently watched this one episode where this 15-year-old boy has this connection with God. This 15-year-old boy hears the voice of God, and he goes around. He's like a prophet among his circle of peers. And later they determine that there's this tumor in his brain that they have to get rid of. But up until that point, he was adamant that God was talking to him. And House, who thinks religion is absolutely crazy for anybody to believe in God, sits down with this boy and they have a conversation. And the bleaker that this boy's future was, the more dependent he was on the love and grace of God. And House could not understand why this boy was so committed to his faith, even when there was nothing for the boy to touch or to see or to feel. The boy said, "I might not be able to see God, but I know that God is with me because I have faith." And this ended up being the beginning of his story to a new chapter in his life after he was saved. We all have our beginning stories. We all have our experiences with God and how God is present in our life. And the beginning of my faith doesn't come because of some light that was shown and I saw God. It wasn't because of some experience that I had when I found Jesus. My faith started with a baby born in a manger who brought light into the world. My faith started in the waters of baptism, where I was loved and supported by a community of faith, by my parents and by my family. God comes into the world to be the light of the world, to live among us. And we have the scriptures, the Bible, that records the life and the ministry and the birth and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And because we have seen God in Jesus, because we have the faith of our ancestors, because we have hope, we can continue to live our lives and be inspirational to other people who might not have the same thing we do. Next Sunday, we move into Epiphany. And we'll talk about the light of the world and how the light enables us to live the lives that God calls us to. And I really love Epiphany because of the new possibilities of the new year and the talk about light of Christ in our lives. But as we move, I always get a little sad because I don't think Christmas really gets its due, right? We have Epiphany, which is about 5 or 6 weeks. We have Easter, which is 7 weeks. We have Pentecost, which seems like it goes on forever. It's like 20 or 25 weeks. And Lent gets 6 weeks where we celebrate Lent. Advent gets 4 weeks where we celebrate Advent. But Christmas only gets 12 days. And if we're honest about Christmas, we really don't even give it the full 12 days because right after Christmas Eve is over, we start to put away the decorations, we start to move on. I was in the store this weekend and they're already taking down all the Christmas stuff and putting up Valentine's Day stuff. But what I realize is that Christmas is not just the 12 days. It's not just a season, but it's a way of life. Christmas isn't over when we get to Epiphany. It's the start of a revolution. And while the season may pass, Christmas reminds us of God's decision to become one of us. It's not a season or a celebration, it's a promise that challenges us to participate in every single day of our lives. God comes to us because our lives matter to God, and how we live our lives, how we interact with one another is important to God. So as we move from 2018 into 2019, as we work together as the people of God to do the work of God in our church, in our community, and around the world, we live into the promises of love and peace and hope and joy. And with those promises, we continue to share our story with one another and the world.